He died and nobody. He came back with the power to change everything. This is Reality Quest. The map displayed the location of a real-world dungeon hidden within the high-end Royal Castle apartment complex that was currently under construction. The system recommended a party of at least 2 people and set a 5-day countdown until the dungeon officially opened. Terrified by the prospect of a high-difficulty raid, he attempted to cancel the quest. But the system threatened severe penalties. Realizing he needed a strong teammate, he approached Hain and Unsung at school the next day. However, Unsung flatly refused the invitation. Reminding Do-wan that he was not a pawn to be controlled and explicitly stating he was already busy on the day the dungeon was set to open. Left without his strongest ally, Do-wan was forced to figure out another way to survive the impending raid. Jihan sat across from him, noticing his distress and asking what was wrong. Do-wan briefly considered inviting him, but quickly dismissed the thought, deciding it was entirely irresponsible to drag his normal friend into a random, highly dangerous combat scenario. When the school day ended, the students poured out of the gates, leaving Do-wan alone with his impending dungeon crisis. His worries were interrupted by Kian, who appeared silently beside him like a ghost. Startled, he asked why she was constantly sneaking up on him. She casually explained that since she still didn't have his phone number, physically tracking him down was her only option. She insisted it was time for him to officially greet the remaining members of Boraim Dong. Brushing off his protests that he hadn't done anything special to warrant a formal leadership introduction. Walking through a crowded street toward their designated meeting spot. A junior gang member formally bowed and loudly addressed Do-wan as their leader. The public display deeply embarrassed him. He nervously corrected the kid, insisting they weren't typical thugs and requesting to simply be called a representative. At the gathering, the entire table bowed their heads in unison before digging into their noodles. Leaving Do-wan sweating profusely under the immense pressure of his new, unwanted political power. He mentally debated if the stress of the position was worth the protection it provided. He was introduced to Sinihai, a bizarrely dressed older man sporting a beard, glasses, and a garish outfit that made him look completely out of place. To Do-wan's absolute shock, Kong Si-hun was also sitting at the table, radiating a dangerous, tattooed aura. The two immediately clashed, with Si-hun furious that a weakling was officially his leader. And Do-wan threatening to break his nose again if he didn't back down. Kian silenced their bickering with a terrifying, wide-eyed glare that instantly restored order. Sinihai shifted the conversation to a more serious topic, bringing up the rising tensions with the rival Bangchan Dong faction. He warned that ignoring territorial boundaries and causing trouble could spark a massive incident with the broader council. Si-hun arrogantly dismissed the threat, claiming he could wipe out the rival kids by himself. Do-wan couldn't help but offer a contemptuous chuckle at the giant's misplaced overconfidence. Meanwhile, at a stalled, desolate construction site, a highly tense standoff was occurring. An elderly director leaning heavily on a cane desperately pleaded with a thug wearing a green vest to stop delaying their project, noting that innocent workers were suffering due to the halt. The thug brazenly demanded more pocket money for his hard-working juniors before they would even consider leaving the premises. The director angrily accused the gang of lacking basic business ethics, which only served to annoy the thug further. Despising the preachy lecture, the thug ordered his subordinate, USOC, to physically massage the old man until he agreed to open his wallet. USOC rolled up his sleeves, a menacing gangster look settling over his face as he wiped blood stains from his hands. The green-vested thug openly boasted about his grand plan to swallow the weak Boraim Dong territory whole, eager to exact brutal revenge on Do-wan and Hain Sung for their previous interference. A subordinate received a phone call confirming the deployment order. And the heavily armed Bangchan Dong thugs immediately mobilized to launch a full-scale assault. The Bangchan Dong thugs arrived in force, only to find Do-wan and Kong Si-hun already waiting for them. As the two sides squared off, the system abruptly chimed in, announcing that the Royal Castle dungeon had been officially entered. Si-hun was thrilled by the incoming brawl, eager to crush the invaders and steal the glory. Do-wan mentally noted that despite his absolute hatred for violence, he simply couldn't resist the allure of a guaranteed golden key reward. The system issued a newbie mission to eliminate 5 low-level monsters, which perfectly aligned with the charging wave of rival thugs. Do-wan and Sehun fought back to back. Do-wan poured his newly acquired strength into his attacks, easily neutralizing the iron pipe-wielding enemies with rapid, precise strikes. The system tracked his progress, ticking off the eliminated monsters one by one. After swiftly taking out the low-level grunts and securing his golden key, Sehun set his sights on the Bangchan Dong representative waiting upstairs, leaving Do-wan to deal with a highly dangerous elite monster who blocked the path. Do-wan found himself facing Isoc, a cold and calculated enforcer who immediately knocked Do-wan's weapon away, confidently claiming he would finish the fight bare-handed. Recognizing the skill gap, Do-wan shifted to a purely defensive counterattack strategy, waiting for Isoc to strike so he could punish the gaps in his defense. During the brutal, high-speed exchange, Isoc revealed he had thoroughly investigated Do-wan's past. He brought up the Sun Shelter, a non-profit organization founded by Do-wan's late father aimed at guiding delinquent youths onto the right path. Isoc mockingly referred to the late Hidino, claiming the man had died foolishly believing he had successfully educated them. Completely unaware that his own son was now brawling with the very delinquents he had sacrificed his life to save. The cruel insult to his parents sent Do-wan into a blind, unfocused rage. He screamed at Isoc to stop talking about his family, fully engaging his specialized combat skills to deliver a massive blow. However, Isoc's stamina seemed completely limitless. He constantly recovered and stood back up like an undead zombie no matter how hard Do-wan hit him. Exhausted, bleeding, and running dangerously low on mana. Do-wan desperately recalled a childhood memory of playing a retro video game called Tunlam with his father. He remembered repeatedly dying against an invincible demon king and wanting to give up. His father had gently encouraged him, promising that nothing in a game was truly impossible and there was always a hidden mechanic to win. Do-wan had eventually discovered that executing a specific falling attack triggered a devastating, unblockable finishing move. Applying this exact gamer logic to reality, Do-wan resolved to execute the Tunlam technique. He launched himself into a high-risk, falling attack, pouring every last drop of his remaining mana into the strike. The critical blow landed with explosive force, completely shattering Isoc's seemingly invincible defense and sending the elite monster flying across the room. Sprawled on the floor, Isoc was left completely stunned, unable to comprehend how his perfect defense had been broken by such an unorthodox maneuver. Dragging his battered body up the dark stairwell, Do-wan gasped for air with every step. Reaching the upper floor, he found Sehun collapsed in a corner, trapped in a brutal struggle against the Bangchan Dong representative, Bakshin. Bakshin sneered, expressing his love for opponents who let their guard down, and tightened his grip around Sehun's neck, promising that this was where the giant would truly die. Refusing to let his temporary ally perish, Do-wan rushed forward and shoved Bakshin away with the last ounces of his strength. He frantically asked Sehun if he could still stand, reminding the giant of his earlier toughness. Sehun hesitated, clearly startled by the sudden intervention, but quickly adopted a fighting stance. Do-wan admitted he was only buying time for Sehun to escape. But Bakshin laughed at their touching display of friendship, finding it entirely disgusting. Before Bakshin could launch another assault, an oppressive aura flooded the room. Do-no Sedang had arrived just in time. Bakshin immediately panicked, sweating profusely as he tried to explain that the Boraim Dong thugs had trespassed on their territory. Do-no Sedang ignored the excuses, infuriated that Bakshin had botched the operation and pocketed unauthorized funds. With a single, terrifyingly fast strike, Do-no Sedang sent Bakshin flying across the room, knocking his teeth out and neutralizing the Bangchan representative instantly. Do-wan could barely believe his eyes, realizing that Do-no Sedang operated on a completely different level of power. Just as Do-no Sedang turned his menacing gaze toward Boraim Dong, Hainan Unsung casually strolled onto the scene, telling everyone to stop messing around. Do-no Sedang coldly demanded that Unsung forget about the territorial dispute, warning that if he did not back off, he would kill him. Unsung remained unfazed, ordering Do-no Sedang not to touch his people again. As the terrifying figure departed, Do-wan realized that Unsung had deliberately shown up to protect him, honoring their previous arrangement. With the main threat neutralized, Sehun stubbornly declared he was leaving, refusing to officially accept the representative title from a weakling, but promising to take the position next time. The system chimed, announcing that the royal palace dungeon had been officially cleared. Expecting a massive payout, Do-wan eagerly awaited his loot. However, the system brutally calculated his boss attack contribution at 0%. Instead of high-tier items, he was rewarded with 12 copper keys. Frustrated but pragmatic, he dumped the keys into his maximum MP and agility stats. The following morning brought clear skies and a sense of solemnity. Do-wan dressed meticulously and visited the columbarium to pay respects on the anniversary of his father's passing. Staring intently at a family photograph, he recalled the agonizing night at the hospital when the police ruled the fatal car crash as a tragic accident caused by brake failure. His quiet morning was interrupted by Unsung's arrival. Unsung praised the late Hidino as a genuinely good man who sacrificed himself to guide troubled youth. However, Unsung shattered Do-wan's world by revealing that the crash was not an accident at all, but a highly premeditated murder orchestrated by someone incredibly close to the family. Do-wan was paralyzed with shock, demanding to know how Unsung could possibly know such a thing. Unsung explained that during his confrontation with the Bangcheon-dong thugs, Do-no Sedang had shown him a hidden video file. The recording contained undeniable evidence of the crime scene from 3 years ago. Unsung left the revelation hanging in the air, urging Do-wan to consider his next move carefully. Driven by a desperate need for the truth, Do-wan tracked down Do-no Sedang later that evening amidst a torrential downpour. Waiting in the freezing rain, he confronted the terrifying enforcer, demanding the memory card containing the evidence. Do-no Sedang was amused by his audacity, holding the tiny card between his fingers and casually stating that if Do-wan wanted it, he would have to take it by force. Do-wan charged forward, utilizing his superhuman speed skills to launch a barrage of attacks. However, Do-no Sedang simply smiled, easily dodging every single strike. Do-no Sedang mocked the predictable trajectory of the punches, effortlessly parrying a desperate gap strike. Do-wan drops lightly to the ground, feet hitting the pavement with a soft landing. He feels it an opening. He just needs to be faster than he has been. Do-wan's face is a mask of determination, sweat beading on his forehead as his gaze fixes on his opponent. Do-no Sedang declared he would only need to hit Do-wan twice to end the fight. Moving faster than the eye could track, he delivered a devastating haymaker directly to Do-wan's jaw. The impact was catastrophic, instantly dropping Do-wan's HP from a comfortable maximum down to the low 200s. Screaming in agony and coughing up blood, Do-wan collapsed, his legs entirely refusing to support his weight. Trying to fight through the blinding pain, Do-wan blindly grabbed Do-no Sedang's ankle, attempting to use the slippery floor to his advantage. He unleashed his rampage skill, raining down thunderous punches onto Do-no Sedang's face. When he finally paused to catch his breath, he realized with absolute horror that his knuckles were bleeding from striking the concrete. Do-no Sedang had dodged every single blow. With a look of sheer disappointment, Do-no Sedang delivered his second and final strike, launching Do-wan into a nearby brick wall. Dangling the memory card mockingly, he promised to beat Do-wan to death if they ever crossed paths again, leaving the broken boy unconscious in the freezing rain. When Do-wan finally regained consciousness, the profound sting of utter defeat washed over him. He realized his current strength was entirely insufficient to face true monsters. As tears mixed with the lingering raindrops on his face, the system materialized a brand new, highly demanding questline focused entirely on extreme physical conditioning. Determined to avenge his father, Do-wan accepted the grueling regimen. The system's tasks were utterly humiliating and physically torturous. He was forced to bear crawl the entire distance to his high school, suffering the mocking laughter of passing girls who filmed the bizarre spectacle. He spent hours executing invisible chair sits, catching hundreds of wild pigeons with his bare hands, and hanging upside down from playground slides until his muscles screamed in agony. A week of this hellish routine pushed him to the brink of despair. Lying on his back in the dirt, he apologized to his late father, feeling that the training was simply too extreme. Kong Si-hun, who happened to be doing pull-ups at the same playground, interrupted his self-pity. Si-hun surprisingly respected the grind, revealing that he used to be morbidly obese and had spent 2 grueling years exercising in the dead of night to avoid the gym's judgmental stares. Inspired by his former bully's dedication, Do-wan threw himself back into the training with renewed ferocity. 2 agonizing months passed in a blur of sweat and systemic milestones. Finally, the system announced that his body-strengthening progress had hit 100%. Do-no Sedang was sitting quietly in his office when the door swung open. He smirked, assuming Do-wan had returned for another beating. Do-no Sedang's eyes filled with murderous intent as he leaped across the room, launching a lethal kick. To his absolute shock, Do-wan's demeanor had completely transformed, his posture was sturdy, and his eyes radiated absolute confidence. A brilliant blue light enveloped his body, radically permanently altering his base stats. Looking at the notifications, he knew it was time for a rematch. To his absolute shock, Do-wan casually blocked the strike with a single forearm. Do-no Sedang tried to quickly reposition, throwing a brutal punch aimed squarely at Do-wan's face. Once again, Do-wan easily deflected the blow, flipping the script and putting the terrifying enforcer on the defensive. He calmly demanded to know where the evidence came from. Realizing the boy had evolved into a genuine threat, Do-no Sedang's sadistic excitement peaked. He unleashed a flurry of high-speed kicks, palm strikes, and grappling maneuvers. However, the system's training had skyrocketed Do-wan's defensive stats and mental fortitude. Do-wan effortlessly dodged a spinning kick that carved into the drywall, and countered with an uppercut that nearly flipped Do-no Sedang backward. Refusing to rely on cheap tricks, Do-wan absorbed a direct punch to the face without even flinching. Rolling up his sleeves, he cranked his own combat speed to the maximum, bombarding Do-no Sedang with a relentless storm of critical strikes. The final earth-shattering blow connected squarely with Do-no Sedang's torso, launching the arrogant boss across the room and embedding him deeply into the office wall. Do-wan dusted off his jacket, treating the defeated boss like mere street trash. Snatching the memory card from the desk, he left the wrecked office without a second glance. Downstairs, the Bangcheon-dong boss, Bakshin, had arrived with a mob of 40 heavily armed thugs, tipped off by the blaring security alarms. However, their path up the stairs was entirely blocked by Hainan Unsung, who sat casually on the steps. Unsung radiated an oppressive, lethal aura, offering the mob a simple choice: retreat immediately or be beaten into the concrete. Intimidated by Unsung's terrifying reputation, the 40 thugs hesitated long enough for Do-wan to casually descend the stairs and stroll out the front door, leaving the rival gang completely baffled. Relocating to a quiet park bench, Do-wan and Unsung finally reviewed the footage on the memory card. The short, grainy video showed a masked figure tampering with the brakes of Do-wan's father's car. Unsung pointed out a crucial, chilling detail on the culprit's jacket. Do-wan's blood ran cold as he recognized the logo. It was the official uniform of the Sunshine Shelter, the very organization his father had dedicated his life to building. The horrifying realization that his father had been murdered by one of the youths he was trying to save filled Do-wan with a quiet, burning rage. He swore to Unsung that no matter how long it took, he would hunt down the culprit and crush them completely. Do-wan's resolute vow to crush his father's murderer was abruptly derailed the very next day in class. The teacher sternly announced the upcoming midterm exams, advising the students to focus entirely on studying and tackling the difficult questions. Panic seized Do-wan as he realized the brutal reality of his situation. He had spent the entire semester fighting for his life against violent bullies and completing system quests, leaving him completely unprepared academically. If he failed these exams, his life would be ruined before he could even exact his revenge. Seeing Do-wan frantically panicking at his desk, his new friend Jihan gently offered a lifeline. Jihan suggested that they study together at his house after school, assuring Do-wan that he could help him catch up. Do-wan eagerly accepted, relieved to have a study partner. However, as they walked home together, the system suddenly materialized a brand new notification board. The prompt announced a protection mission. ordering Do-wan to keep Jihan completely safe for the entire duration of the exam period. Do-wan felt a sinking sensation in his gut. Instantly recognizing that a protection mission meant Jihan was inevitably going to be in severe danger. Arriving at Jihan's address, Do-wan was left completely speechless. They stood before a towering, magnificent mansion. A polite housekeeper welcomed them inside, gently noting that it had been a very long time since Jihan had brought a friend over, and promised to bring them a plate of fresh fruit. Moving upstairs to study, Do-wan marveled at the sheer scale of the house. He was even more astounded when Jihan casually showed him a dedicated gaming room packed with high-end equipment, explaining that his parents had given him the entire second floor as a birthday present. Do-wan silently admitted that the lifestyle gap between them was astronomical. The study sessions went smoothly for a few days, lulling Do-wan into a false sense of security. Walking home from school, he began to wonder if he had worried about the system's protection mission for nothing. Their peaceful walk was violently interrupted by a chilling voice calling Jihan's name. A highly intimidating student named Legumin blocked their path, claiming he was in the neighborhood for an appointment and decided to track Jihan down because he missed him. Do-wan immediately noticed that Jihan's entire body had begun trembling uncontrollably. Gumin cast a despicable, assessing glare at Do-wan, asking Jihan who his new friend was. Mustering every ounce of courage he possessed, Jihan stepped back and firmly told Gumin that he never wanted to see him again, demanding that he stop appearing in front of him. Jihan quickly grabbed Do-wan's arm and dragged him away from the scene. Gumin watched them leave with the twisted, sinister gaze of a predator. Walking away, Do-wan cautiously asked who the guy was, noting that he hardly looked like a friend. A dark shadow fell over Jihan's face. He apologized to Do-wan, stating he couldn't study that day and needed to go home alone. Do-wan watched his friend retreat, his mind connecting the dots. The next day, driven by a terrible premonition, Do-wan relentlessly pressed the doorbell at Jihan's mansion. The housekeeper answered through the intercom, sounding thoroughly confused because she believed Do-wan wasn't coming over. She casually mentioned that Jihan had gone out earlier with a group of old middle school friends who had shown up unannounced to pick him up. The blood drained from Do-wan's face. His fears were instantly confirmed when the system board violently updated. The mission objective shifted from a simple protection task to a high-stakes rescue mission, warning him that he had abandoned his target and offering a mysterious hidden item as the ultimate reward. Meanwhile, deep inside a smoky, basement billiards club, Jihan sat frozen in terror on a leather sofa. He was surrounded by Gumin's gang, which included 2 vicious female bullies and several heavily muscled thugs. Gumin relentlessly mocked Jihan's wealthy lifestyle, aggressively questioning why Jihan hadn't stayed in touch. The gang treated Jihan like a plaything, pouring him drinks he was too terrified to touch and insulting his quiet demeanor. Gumin decided to play a twisted game, announcing a friendship test. He declared he was going to slap Jihan in the face. And if a single person in the room offered to take the hit for him, Jihan would pass the test. The room fell dead silent, the gang members eagerly watching the psychological torture. When no one moved, Gumin delivered a brutal slap, knocking Jihan to the floor and drawing blood. Gumin then ordered a lackey to take Jihan's credit card and go buy the gang more alcohol and cigarettes, effectively holding the boy hostage. Frantically sprinting through the darkening streets, Do-wan searched every internet cafe and karaoke room he could find, his panic mounting with every passing second. His phone finally rang. It was Gumin, taunting him and demanding to know if he was the new friend who had been walking with Jihan earlier. Gumin sadistically invited Do-wan to the secret base, warning that if he didn't show up, his wealthy friend would be in severe danger. Do-wan arrived at the designated address just in time to intercept the 2 thugs returning with the stolen alcohol. The gang inside the billiards club was startled when one of their own was violently thrown through the front doors, crashing onto the floor. Do-wan dragged the second thug inside, locking eyes with Gumin and the rest of the gang. He loudly apologized to Jihan for being late, then flatly declared that he was going to beat every single person in the room to a pulp. A flashback revealed the tragic origin of Jihan and Gumin's toxic relationship. They had met in a hospital ward where both of their mothers were receiving critical care. bonded by their shared grief and similar wealthy backgrounds. They had become incredibly close friends who deeply understood each other's pain. However, their friendship shattered when Guman's mother was abruptly transferred to emergency care and eventually passed away, while Jihan's mother survived. Consumed by blind jealousy and grief, Guman began to resent Jihan simply because his mother was still alive. Eventually using his friend's pain to manipulate, isolate, and violently bully him. Back in the present, the gang mocked Do-wan's bold declaration, completely underestimating the high school student. A blonde thug rushed forward, only to be instantly knocked unconscious by Do-wan's penetrate the gap skill. Analyzing the numerical disadvantage, Do-wan decided to conserve his mana by executing ultra-precise, single-hit knockouts aimed directly at their chins. He systematically dismantled the charging gang members with terrifying speed. A massive, overweight thug attempted to overpower him with brute force, scoffing at Do-wan's punches. The fat thug managed to grab Do-wan by the collar, throwing him across the room. Recovering quickly, Do-wan channeled blue electrical energy into his fist, utilizing a 5-strike combo to shatter the giant's defense and drop him to the floor with a shattered jaw. Witnessing the brutal efficiency, the remaining low-level thugs were paralyzed with fear. Do-wan stepped over the groaning bodies, his cold gaze fixed entirely on Guman. However, Guman merely smirked and pointed toward a dark corner of the room. A heavily muscled boy with curly hair sat up from a makeshift bed, yawning and complaining about the noise. This was Kim Kong-chi, the undisputed #1 fighter from their middle school days, operating on a completely different power level than the rest of the gang. Kong-chi engaged Do-wan, instantly proving his rank. Realizing basic attacks were useless against a trained fighter, Do-wan utilized his eagle landing technique, aiming a spinning aerial kick directly at Kong-chi's head. Kong-chi narrowly dodged the fatal blow, taking the brutal impact on his shoulder instead, which left him bleeding and deeply enraged. Just as Do-wan prepared a finishing strike, Guman made a coward's move. He snatched a sharp metal dart from a nearby throwing board and pressed it directly against Jihan's neck, screaming at Do-wan to stand down or he would puncture his friend's throat. Do-wan froze instantly, capitalizing on the hostage situation. Kong-chi unleashed his fury, brutally beating the defenseless Do-wan with a series of heavy punches to the lungs and face. As Do-wan suffered the savage beating, Guman further tortured Jihan mentally. He threatened to send all the archived videos and photos of Jihan's past humiliations directly to Jihan's sickly mother, knowing the severe shock could be fatal to her weak heart. Guman demanded that Jihan drop to his knees and beg. Watching Do-wan take a brutal beating for his sake, Jihan remembered a conversation with his mother. She had hoped he would find a strong friend to protect him since she was too weak to do so herself. Jihan realized that true friendship was a two-way street. He had to be strong enough to protect the people who stood by him. He also acknowledged his deepest regret, abandoning Guman to darkness years ago because he was too afraid to confront his grieving friend's downward spiral. Refusing to run away any longer, Jihan finally snapped. Utilizing years of secret martial arts training he had undertaken to ensure his mother never had to worry about him, Jihan executed a flawless Jeet Kune Do maneuver. In a blinding flash, he disarmed Guman, throwing the stunned bully hard onto the floor and pinning him down. With the hostage situation neutralized, Do-wan unleashed his full fury on the distracted Kong-chi, activating his destruction skill to permanently end the fight. The entire room was left in ruins, every gang member battered and groaning on the floor. Kong-chi, terrified by the sheer violence he had just witnessed, scrambled to his feet and cowardly fled the building. Do-wan snatched Guman's phone, threatening to smash him to pieces if he ever dared to distribute the blackmail material. Guman pathetically attempted to bribe Do-wan, but his offer was met with utter disgust. Jihan stood over his former friend, declaring that he would no longer live in fear, marking the absolute end of their toxic history. Walking home under the streetlights, Jihan expressed his deep gratitude to Do-wan, admitting that having a reliable friend gave him the immense courage needed to finally fight back. Do-wan smiled warmly, glad the ordeal was over, opening his system interface to claim his hard-earned reward. Do-wan expected to find another key to upgrade his stats. Instead, a cloud of thick, ominous black smoke materialized in his hand. The smoke condensed into a heavy, dark padlock. The system identified the hidden item as the black lock. As he was reading the description, Do-wan stared at the cursed item, praying he would never find himself in a situation desperate enough to use it. And that's where we leave it. If you made it this far, do me a favor and hit subscribe, like and share this story for your friends to enjoy because the next episode picks up right where this cliffhanger drops. Drop a comment on what you think happens next, and I'll see you in the next one.